How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. We got a lot to talk about on the show today. Last night was SmackDown, and they made a bunch of changes to WrestleMania, not the least of which was we have a new SmackDown Women's Champion, Charlotte Flair. Charlotte, Ronda, both champions going into the match with Becky Lynch at WrestleMania, and I guess we'll find out what this means. It's pretty obvious what this means, but we can talk about it after the break. Also, later on in the show today, Darren Antola is going to join us. He is one of the producers of 350 Days, a documentary on the legends of professional wrestling. Bret Hart, Billy Graham, Ted DiBiase, Greg Valentine, J.J. Dillon, Lanny Poffo. The list goes on and on. All of these legends featured in this new documentary, which is available for pre-order on iTunes, as well as Blu-ray, DVD releases at Walmart.com, Amazon.com, other retail sites online. April 2nd, 2019 is the official release date. You should check it out. I've watched about half of it, got the screener shortly before we went on the air, got about an hour in before we had to go on the air, and really enjoyed it. So we'll talk to Darren here today on the show about this new documentary. It's coming up later on in the program. Also, we got the Raw ratings from Monday night. We got some updates to the G1 Supercard show. Flip Gordon, unfortunately, not able to wrestle on the show. He re-injured his right knee. Will not be appearing on Sunday, March 31st. Completely locked up after a match for OTT Wrestling in Belfast. And there is concern he may have suffered a bucket handle meniscus tear, which would require surgery, keep him out 4 to 6 months, just coming back from a knee injury. So we'll update you on everything regarding the G1 show and more. Whatever's on your mind today, text messages, 425-780-7566. We'll probably take a few phone calls, but not sure how much time we'll have. But once again, text messages, 425-780-7566. Back in a moment to kick it off, Wrestling Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. We got a lot of news to talk about here today in the final segment of the show. Special guest here today, Darren Antola, talking the documentary 350 Days, which will be released on April 2nd. All sorts of different places, iTunes, Blu-ray, DVD on Walmart, Amazon.com, etc. Talk to him about the documentary here today. In the meantime, we got news, and we're going to kick it off with this. Last night on SmackDown, they did a Charlotte Asuka match for the SmackDown Women's title, and Charlotte won the title. And if you could only see the messages that I've gotten in the last 12 hours or so about this situation here. This person wants to know why Asuka isn't quitting today. This person here wants to know what did Asuka do to deserve what she got last night. As a fan who cherished... skip that one. Where is it here? Yes, what did Asuka do to deserve what she got last night? As a fan who cherished and adored her time in NXT with such care and protected booking, I hate this. I don't know if I will ever wish Kairi to be called up now. I could go on and on here, but people very, very upset about Asuka. And listen, everybody, I don't know what's happened to professional wrestling. I don't know what's happened to it. Everyone seemed to have a better grasp of what wrestling was like 15 years ago. It's more out in the open than ever, and people are still confused about what this business is. It's just a show, and every wrestler is a performer. It's like the Cirque du Soleil. It's just a little more physical in some ways. Cirque du Soleil people, they're very, very athletic, but they don't take a lot of bumps when they do something went wrong. It's a bunch of performers, and they're out there performing. They're told what to do. It's sports entertainment. It's a work. It's fake. And stories are told based around championship belts. And they tell stories, and they create rivalries, and people get belts, and they defend belts. And the belt, as Bret Hart said in I think it was actually Vince Russo, whoever said it in 1997, it is a prop. It's just, you do a stage play, and there's mops and brooms and there's a belt. There's a championship belt. There's a prop. Okay? So, yes, Asuka lost the fake belt last night. Okay? It's not the end of the world for Asuka. I come on the show regularly. I have to talk people off the ledge about stuff like this. She just lost a belt because WrestleMania is a story they're telling, the first ever women's main event, and it happens to involve Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch. And they want to make it as big as they can. And so as part of this story, they decided that Charlotte is also going to be a champion going into the match on Sunday. And honest to God, forget Asuka. It doesn't matter who the SmackDown champion was. At the end of the day, what they want at the end of WrestleMania appears to be the big curtain call with Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, and Sasha, the 4 horsewomen standing out there closing WrestleMania, and they all have championship belts. That's what the props are for on Sunday. All 4 of those horsewomen are going to be standing there with a belt around their waist or a belt high above their head. That's why this is done. It's just part of a story. It's not because they don't like Asuka. It's not because they think Asuka sucks. It's not because Asuka's being buried. It's not because Asuka has no future in WWE. This has nothing to do with Asuka. And somebody on Twitter last night even said, this isn't about Charlotte, Bryan. It's about Asuka. No, you're wrong. It's the opposite. This is not about Asuka. It's about Charlotte. The women's champion could have been Asuka. It could have been Carmella. It could have been Naomi. It could have been one of the... It doesn't matter who the SmackDown champion would have been. They want the horsewomen closing out the show as champions at WrestleMania. And so whoever was the SmackDown champion, they had to lose that title to Charlotte. That's it. Don't make a bigger deal out of this than it is. Because it's not a big deal at all. I think you'd like to add, Mike.
Asuka fans are understandably emotional. And if you want to poke fun at WWE for not pulling the trigger on this and doing it a while ago, you can do that, I guess. But I was a proponent of taking that belt off of Asuka, putting it on either Becky or Charlotte, and having it lead into the match. Now, I guess from what you're saying, this is not going to be for both titles. This is still only going to be for Ronda's Raw Championship.
I mean, right now it's only for the Raw title. They could very well unify the titles. We'll find out probably next week.
Well, if they unify them, it takes a little bit of steam off of your thing where everybody's standing there and everybody gets to cheers their belt in the middle of the ring. It would take that away from Charlotte. Not to say that you couldn't have them all still standing there with belts, hands raised high in the air as Ronda looks angry on the outside and cut to black or something like that. But I don't know. I was a proponent of taking this belt off of Asuka because I like the idea of having, you bring Ronda in there. She's undefeated. She wants to be undisputed. You have Charlotte and Becky obviously trying to take Ronda's belt, and one of them would have had to. I just think it makes sense, and I think it makes sense to keep those belts together and treat them like the tag titles. And once this whole thing is over with, and they won't because they have 2 different shows and this is what they do, but I think it would mean a lot more to have somebody go from show to show, because then you can have dueling storylines where Asuka is looking to get revenge on one side and somebody on the other side is looking to face the champion, and you have a feud underneath that can feed into those for the thing that happens the next time around. Now that would rely on a lot of planning for WWE, and of course have to do that, but it's something I'd like, a direction I'd really like to see them go, and I'd like to see them do the same thing with the tag titles. Keep one pair of them and not have feuding back and forth between the partners, and have them go back and forth for a while and try to build up those titles that way.
Person says, you told us all along the win for Asuka making Becky tap at Royal Rumble meant absolutely nothing. They seriously had no plans for that poor woman. Basically, Asuka beat Becky, Charlotte beat Asuka, now Becky will beat Charlotte. Nobody gets over this way. Another one I gotta talk off the ledge. Asuka is not a poor woman. She is a very, very successful WWE performer who has been the champion since December. She was a champion since December. She was the champion. You're calling her a poor woman because she lost the title to set up the women main eventing WrestleMania. She is not a poor woman.
In storyline form, she doesn't lose a lot.
Nor do I think that Becky is beating Charlotte in Mania. And if she does, she's going to beat Charlotte, win the SmackDown title, and then go beat Ronda for the Raw title. Becky Lynch is beating Ronda Rousey, everybody. Just like I had to talk people off the ledge last week about Kofi Kingston. Last night, what did they do? They did an angle. Kofi Kingston is in the main event, or the Daniel Bryan match at WrestleMania. Now, I will say this about that Kofi Kingston thing last night. Is exactly what I said. They had one thing that worked, a gauntlet match, and they had to run it into the ground. We've now had 2 gauntlet matches since that one gauntlet match. The one last night was okay, but you know what? When the New Day won that gauntlet match and got Kofi into WrestleMania, and they sent out all of the wrestlers to surround the ring and clap and cheer and pound on the mat, I hate to be the guy, everybody, but you can go back yourself. Look at the arena. Look at the fans in the arena. Like, it's sad. They were cheering, but like, it wasn't like they were on their feet. It wasn't like they were giving the guy a standing ovation. It was they went too far. They went 1 week too far. And another thing, I would bet, I didn't hear from anybody in the building, but I would bet that everybody sitting there was just waiting for somebody to come out and screw Kofi. Because they were conditioned to believe that you better not get too excited about Kofi, because we screw him every time. And finally last night they didn't screw him, and the fans just sat there waiting for it. It was like in the 90s when they looked to the back to see who was going to run in. They just sat there. As the wrestlers trying so hard to get people clapping and cheering, they just sat there. Back in a moment with more Wrestling Observer Live. This person here sent me this Asuka fan letter to Vince. I guess he's going to send this to Vince McMahon via WWE.com or something. I am completely disgusted at WWE and Vince McMahon for messing up Asuka on the main roster. Undefeated streak broken unnecessarily. Booked like a geek for 8 months with multiple losses to Carmella. Randomly given the SmackDown Women's title to help further the Becky Charlotte Ronda story. Once again becomes a minor character in the Becky Charlotte Ronda story by making Becky tap so that Becky overcomes adversity in the Rumble. So he's even complaining that she beat Becky. Immediately falls off the face of the earth for over a month. Reappears and loses to Mandy. Doesn't mention beating Mandy. Yet again becomes a minor character in the Charlotte-Becky Ronda story by randomly losing the title to Charlotte. I hope those paychecks make Asuka happy, because as a fan, I'm suffering.
I bet you they do. I bet you they do. I don't know. I think, everything he said was true, I guess. It still doesn't mean that she's been used awfully or anything like that. She doesn't lose on TV. She's had 2 long title runs. Yes, they've done some dumb things with her. Look up and down that main roster, everyone from Randy Orton down to Tyler Breeze, and ask yourself, have they used all of those people in the way that you would have used them?
Nobody. Like 5 people.
There was a good reason to get upset about, I think, the Kofi story. There's a good reason there to get upset about what was happening with Becky Lynch way back, where she went on that winning streak, and then they said that what you believed in the story they were trying to tell was completely different, even though theirs stunk. I just think when it comes to this one, and maybe I'm misreading how big Asuka is and how passionate her fan base is. This isn't the hill to die on or the war to fight with WWE. I mean, she's been treated great. Yes, is this kind of crappy that she's in the background? Could this be a 4-way and be awesome? Of course, sure it could. She's fantastic. Anybody that's followed her career for even the smallest bit of time, even if it was just in WWE, knows she's awesome. So I don't cry for her, because you're still going to need opponents for Becky Lynch and for Charlotte Flair, and for as much women's talent as they have on that roster, there really is nobody that touches Asuka or is in her realm, and it's not like they don't know that for reals. Like, they know that. Like, she's a legitimate star to them. She's not Charlotte in how WWE. She's not, she's not Becky. She's certainly not where Ronda Rousey's ever going to be, but she certainly has her role, and I think it's a lot better than how people are projecting WWE views her, or how Vince views her, or how creative views her.
Person says, you're telling me that going from a title match at their biggest show to the pre-show Battle Royal in only a few days wouldn't be a bit grating? I know they're professionals and won't complain, but come on. First off, she wasn't even in a title match. I mean, they had an announcement of a match to determine her contender, but that probably was never the plan in the first place. That was a red herring to set up this. Or they just changed their mind, whatever. They gotta have a 20-woman Battle Royal to announce. And who is in it? Do they have 20 women left? Yeah. I mean, she could do a 2-minute title match or a 5-minute title match on the WrestleMania show. Or she could be in the Battle Royal. Maybe she'll even win the Battle Royal. I don't know. But there's 16 matches, potentially 18 matches on this show. Like, I don't know. It's not the end of the world, people. I mean, come on. Really? But says, you think they're going to put Asuka in the main event at Mania as well? No, they're not. She's not part of this story, and it's okay. They'll have stuff for her after WrestleMania. Becky's going to need challengers. Charlotte's going to need challengers. There's going to be stuff for her to do there. I'm not going to even read what this person says all these people sound like. It's not very nice. Person says, you're talking people off the ledge proves that kayfabe is real. But instead of debating whether it's real, fans are debating the intentions of the company. Well, that's the company's fault. I mean, the company has created they've created this deal where they're against you. And so, yeah, now you believe that they're against you.
The spirit of kayfabe was never have fans make up their own storylines or try to guess what the company's doing behind the scenes or anything like that. It was in a reference. I don't know. I guess that's what it is. I mean, with all of this information, with all of this ability to access things in this world, and now more than ever, things seem to be muddied and unclear, and just top that off with a new generation of wrestling fans, a new generation of WWE sports entertainment fans. I mean, there's a lot of things in motion here. I think that probably play into this, but I don't know. I think just people getting too emotionally, just being too fired up and having the ability to tweet it out and to immediately put their feelings out there, I think have a lot to do with this.
Part says, I'm suffering. Cyndi Lauper isn't going to the Hall of Fame. It would have been the perfect year. She's got a Broadway play. It's not happening.
Oh.
Part says, you know who the best heel is in WWE right now? Colin Jost. You're right. He actually is.
It's very good, yes.
He actually is. I want to punch him. All right,
it's amazing. He's actually an actor, comedian with stage experience. So I guess that kind of helps. Last night's
Raw, Monday night's Raw, the next to last episode before Mania, 2.59 million viewers, down 4% from last week, down 23% from the 2-week out from WrestleMania show last year. 23% of their audience gone. 6 for the night on cable in terms of total viewers. The show started lower than it has in recent weeks, but since daylight savings time, been a rather steady 3 hours. 2.7, 2.67, 2.4. Those were the viewers in millions for the show on Monday. And also, sadly, the Flip Gordon story. Knee completely locked up in the morning after wrestling for OTT in Belfast, Northern Ireland, able to fly home. Had a doctor's appointment scheduled for this morning. ROH wrote there was concern that he may have suffered a bucket handle meniscus tear, which would require surgery, keep him out of action for 4 to 6 months. This is just after coming back from an MCL tear in January. So, bad news for Flip Gordon. That's the latest we have on him right now.
I can't believe he came back from an MCL tear this early, but I guess everybody heals faster or heals at their own rates. It just seemed to be very, very quick to try to make it back for Mania week, but what can you say?
Any chance a women's championship can be changed to a title unification match? It could be. We'll find out soon. They'll make an announcement next week. Right now, it's still only for the Raw title. This person here says, I was 100% expecting Vince to throw a wrench in Kofi's celebration when they cut to him entering his limo. When they didn't, I was too confused to celebrate. Hell yeah. This person here says, it's very cool the women are main eventing this year's Mania, but given the length of the show, is it doomed to get little reaction, as the crowd is usually very tired after seeing these long shows? Did you watch WrestleMania last year? Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns in the main event had anything but little reaction. It had the most reaction of anything on the entire show by a wide margin. Now, granted, it was furious booing, and it was people playing with beach balls and screaming, dude,
still takes energy to do that.
If the fans are into this match, it doesn't matter how long the show is, they will be into it. If they're not into it, it's not the length of the show. I've been there. Trust me, these fans can get excited after all of those hours of watching wrestling. It's up to the performers and the company and the way they put the show together. That's what will determine whether or not the fans are into the match or not. This person here says, I guess I'm just not sure why WWE wants to tell stories that large chunks of their audience don't want to see. It's not just the Charlotte thing. They're doing the same thing with Corbin and Angle. Well, yeah, that is. But you know what, everybody? I mentioned this on Twitter last night. Of course, I got the usual blowback. When Charlotte won that title last night, she got a standing ovation from well over half of that building. They cheered, they clapped, they were on their feet, they were happy. And I had every excuse in the book. Oh, well, people like to see a title change. Oh, well, you know, it was a surprise championship change on a SmackDown show. Well, all I know is I can imagine Baron Corbin beating, I don't know, Finn Balor for the title on a Raw show, would not get that standing ovation by over half the crowd. Doesn't matter if it's title change. The fact of the matter is, there are a lot of fans that like Charlotte Flair. There are a lot of fans that are happy to see Charlotte Flair as a third person in that main event at WrestleMania. Yes, there's a very vocal, very, very passionate portion of the crowd that doesn't want to see it. It's not everybody. That goes for a lot of these things right here. Now, the Angle Corbin thing, I don't know. That seems like most of the crowd doesn't want to see it. But I saw with my own eyes Charlotte getting a gigantic ovation for winning that title from Asuka last night. It wasn't like she beat Carmella or some other heel.
You think if they can't figure out anything to do with John Cena here in the next week, but I'm assuming he's still penciled into something that Kurt just beats Corbin in 30 seconds, and then we get about 5 minutes or 4 minutes and 30 seconds of Cena and Kurt Angle. Is that possible?
Could be, but I doubt it.
So what's John Cena going to do?
I don't know, but as of Monday, he had nothing to do with the Kurt Angle thing. Whatever they have planned for him has nothing to do with Kurt Angle and Baron Corbin.
Just hanging out with the people with his hair.
They have something planned. It's going to be another one of those weird things like they did last year, I guess. This person here says, part of the story where Becky and Charlotte try to kill each other for months with Mania, this will all have never happened. Did you say in the past Vince isn't a fan of the Four Horsewomen? I don't remember saying that. What's the point of Charlotte winning the title if her title isn't on the line as well? So they can do a curtain call. The Horsemen will all be there with all their belts at the end of WrestleMania. That's why it was done.
All their belts, and it's a big deal, you know.
Back in a moment. We got a lot to talk about with the director, one of the producers of 350 Days. Coming up after the break, Wrestling Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. Darren Antola joining us here today, one of the producers of 350 Days, which will be released April 2nd. It's available now, pre-order on iTunes, as well as Blu-ray and DVD at Walmart.com, Amazon.com, other online retail sites. Number of legends featured: Bret Hart, Billy Graham, Ted DiBiase, Greg the Hammer Valentine, J.J. Dillon, Lanny Poffo, and more. And Darren, how you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me on, Brian. Much appreciated.
So the first question that I have, I got a screener about 2 hours ago, so I watched the first 45 minutes and haven't been able to finish it yet. But obviously watching the first 45 minutes, one of the things that jumps out to you is you have a documentary featuring a bunch of legends, and a few of them have since passed away. And in the documentary, I mean, Jimmy Snuka's there. He looks super healthy. And who are some of the others that I recall passing away?
George Steele.
George the Animal Steele looks healthy. I mean, I guess the first question is, when did you capture all of this footage? How long has this documentary been in the makings?
I'll tell you, Brian, we started filming April of 2013, and I believe we wrapped in 2014. And it was just amazing getting their stories. And you mentioned Jimmy Snuka. He was really great. We went to his house. He was really ready for the moment, and he was just dying to have his story told, you know. And all these guys were tremendous. But you're absolutely right. A lot of these guys have passed away, and I believe we have some of the last interviews captured on film, like with the Wolfman and, you know, George the Animal Steele, and, you know, a lot of guys that are just dying, and it's just very sad, unfortunately.
Let's go back to the beginning, the origins of this documentary. I mean, you had worked as a cut man, and I guess how did you decide that this was something that you wanted to do?
Well, I'll tell you, I've told the story many, many times, but I'll tell it again. Me as a boxing cut man, you have an inspector in the corner that oversees what you do. Like, for example, when I work in New York, there's a fellow named Billy Caputo, and he's very knowledgeable on wrestling. He was a referee, and we'd always talk about the matches that he reffed, and we became pretty friendly and had an idea to shoot a pilot for a show called The Age Factor. A friend of mine, Steve Fleming, had the idea, and we filmed Riddick Bowe, a guy that blew $80 million, and we shot a really nice pilot. It came out good, and I said, you know, we didn't like the offers we were getting, so I said, Steve, why don't you try to cross it with something else? It could be crossed with wrestling, where you have a 1-hour show showing two guys. You know, it could be Jimmy Snuka trying to be the oldest wrestler to jump off a cage. And again, we're not saying they can do it, but can they or can they not? So it was just a concept for a television show called The Age Factor, and it just didn't work out, you know. And then I got close with Jimmy Snuka, and I promoted his birthday party, and that was really well. And then I'd always do research and how these guys would work. You know, you read 350 days a year, and I says, wow, I said, wouldn't it be interesting to get all these guys together from this elite group and really do a first-class documentary and have their stories told and bring it to the big screen? And that's exactly what we did on July 12th. We screened in 400 theaters nationwide, and it turned out really, really well. We got 5-star reviews on Forbes, and here we are now for iTunes and the DVD being released, and there'll be other platforms as well, just that are in the works.
Now, you mentioned starting filming in 2013, wrapping in 2014. It's 2019. It's been 5 years since you wrapped filming. What happened in those 5 years? Were there roadblocks you ran into? Was it just the amount of staff that you had to put things together? What took 5 years?
Multiple things. The biggest thing is, if you're doing a documentary about one wrestler, you know, you're dealing about maybe a couple of people to get some footage and some photographs. But when you're doing something and you want it to turn out right, then there was cuts. We had to do other cuts to make it better and shorten it. It took a long time, Brian, to get all the photographs together. And if the movie's calling for something, like, let's say, the first 5 or 7 minutes, you can't just slap any kind of picture. It has to all make sense. So it took really a long time. And, you know, me and my partner, David Wilkins, one of the other producers, we financed this ourselves. So it just takes time. You know, I didn't want to get involved with too many investors. I just wanted to try to do this on our own, which we did. But the biggest hurdle was really the pictures, and, you know, again, you have to restructure the movie because you think you have something, but you don't just want to put anything out there. You want to make sure it's done right. So that's pretty much what took the time.
I noticed that when you were doing some of the features on J.J. Dillon, he's talking about going to Japan. There appeared to be what I figured. I mean, I could be wrong. You could tell me. It looked like J.J.'s own home video footage of one of his trips to Japan. Was that his footage?
That's exactly right. He provided that footage for us. He
was
tremendous. I mean, he was exactly right.
Yeah, he's there, and he's just got shots of the ring being set up, and there's shots from a McDonald's. I don't even know what year it was, but just hamburgers, McDonald's, and he's got all sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah, he was really tremendous in helping us promote. He's been great.
So you mentioned befriending Jimmy Snuka and promoting his birthday party.
Right.
There's a shot in the documentary of Jimmy Snuka. I presume he went to a zoo. He doesn't have those animals on his property, did he?
No, you know, that was shot. Actually, that was footage that we were going to use for me and my friend Steve Fleming had shot for The Age Factor. And we used it for this movie because we thought it would really be great. Steve Fleming goes, why don't you use some of this footage that you and I have, he said, for your documentary, and that's exactly what we did.
Now, the reason I bring this up, everybody,
a great adventure.
I just have to mention this, that the Hardys, they do this gimmick when they do their videos where they allegedly have a zoo at their house, but it's not really a zoo at their house, it's down the road. And so I'm sure that some people are listening to this going, Bryan, why do you think that Jimmy Snuka would have a zoo at his house? Why would he have a rhinoceros at his house? If you watch this footage, Jimmy Snuka, I mean, he talks about how he watched the movie Tarzan, and he decided that he wanted to be Tarzan. You watch this footage, he is best friends with these animals. Like, he's got like a carrot in his mouth that a giraffe eats out of his mouth. Like, this is how close he is to these animals. So, yeah, it was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, he's really, the animals were like really close with Jimmy. You see how they were gravitating towards him. It's just pretty funny, yeah.
So were you close with Jimmy? How did this kind of come about? And what was it like? What is it like to deal with Jimmy Snuka? Because as a fan from the outside, you see him interviewed sometimes over the years, and lucidity would be something that he seemingly would slip in and out of. What was he really like to deal with at the time that
there
you
was
were
none of that in the
him?
documentary, actually.
Well, what was it like to deal with him at the time you were dealing with him, and how did this come about for you to promote his birthday party?
Well, I told you, Billy Caputo made the connection for me when we had to do the age factor. So he said, you know what? He goes, I'll get you Jimmy Snuka's wife's phone number and talk to her, because I had an idea about bringing Jimmy into the age factor, which we did. We shot a pilot. And I met Jimmy. He was like just a really, I found him to be a very fascinating man, very generous. I mean, I've seen him at conventions. Like a kid would say, I like that gold chain. He's ready to take it off his neck and give it to him. And his wife would say, no, you can't do that. So, yeah, I mean, I just found him to be a fascinating guy, and we interviewed him. Everybody has a certain kind of charisma. I mean, Jimmy could just slowly talk peacefully, and he just gets his words over, differently than a superstar Billy Graham. But I found him to be very, very fascinating and smart.
When you look at all of the names in the documentary, Bret Hart, Billy Graham, Ted DiBiase, Greg Valentine, Tito Santana, Snuka, George Steele, Abdullah the Butcher, list goes on and on. I mean, to me, and I've only watched 45 minutes, by far, the craziest guy in the documentary was Ox Baker. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, you're absolutely 100% right. He was just all pumped up, and that's just who he was. That's just how he was the whole time we filmed him. He was in that mode from the time we got there until the time we left. But he's very entertaining, and he's tremendous in this documentary.
It's crazy. Like everybody else, superstar Billy Graham, I mean, he sits there and he just calmly says, I never bought into my own press. I never thought that I was the champion. I knew what it was. It was just a job. You got all these other big-time charismatic wrestlers, Paul Orndorff, calmly talking about this and that. Then you go to Ox Baker, and he's screaming, and he's completely out of his mind, and he's screaming about this cookbook that he created, and it was crazy. Was anyone else even close to Ox Baker?
No, I'll tell you, when we filmed Ox Baker, he had this little valet guy at his house. I don't want to mention his name. And the guy was a bartender, and he had like a couple of girls in his bed for the night before, and Ox was like ripping on him, going, look at this guy. He goes, he thinks he's a stud. He's got these 3 scabby women in the bar. He goes, I wouldn't even touch these women. He was just hilarious. I mean, we couldn't put that in there, but he was just unbelievable. And he could give you an abdominal workout from the time you got there until your time left. He was really great. Great.
Were there any names that you wanted to get for the documentary and either it didn't work out or maybe it did work out, but for whatever reason they couldn't make the cut?
We were close to getting Roddy Piper, and he just was schedule conflict, and then he passed on shortly, after. So it was just that was one we really wanted to get. It just didn't materialize.
Anybody that you actually filmed but didn't make the cut? Fulvio Cesare, the director, he filmed 72 wrestlers, I believe, and a lot didn't make the cut. Went to Cauliflower Alley, and he got a lot of stuff, but 72 people, you can't get everybody in there. So we wound up having 38 wrestlers that made the final cut. But there's a lot to name all the names. It's just too many names. So what determined who made the cut? I mean, was it just the star power or the stories that they told, or whether or not they had a lot of memorabilia that you could use?
I think it just came down to a numbers game. I mean, you just couldn't. Everybody had to have some dialogue in a documentary, and you can't just have to jump from guy to guy to guy. And I just think that they were all great and tremendous. And it's just that we had the editor just put it together, and he's like, you can't put everybody in here, which we knew. So Fulvio's pretty sure he's going to do a director's cut, and that'll be special down the road as well.
This one here, I believe, is an hour and 45 minutes long, and
right.
Yeah, director's cut. I mean, you could probably do a good 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of footage that will be shot. Like I say, Cauliflower Rally and 72 plus wrestlers, I believe he got. But yeah, I mean, what's special about this is, like I said, we have some of the last interviews captured on film with guys that passed away, and there's some other guys that passed away who weren't big names. I just can't think of every name right now. I think it was a Cauliflower Rally and stuff. And I think Dick the Destroyer, he just passed away. I believe Fulvio filmed him as well. And just a lot of guys, and I really want everybody to come out April 2nd and watch this. And, every neighborhood had a legendary wrestling building that we used to go to and watch. And just like everybody to relive their childhood and come out and just watch this on April 2nd on iTunes. And you can get the DVD and Blu-ray, but that won't happen until April 4th. So if you really want to watch this, I would order it now for April 2nd on iTunes.
Now, aside from Ox Baker just being completely nuts, was there any one wrestler more than any other that you interviewed or talked to for this documentary that, to you, was just by far the most compelling character?
Well, superstar Billy Graham, he's just got so much charisma. I mean, he's tremendous. Bret Hart was great. Like I say, they're all special in their own way. I think that every single one of them was special. And when you watch the whole film, you'll see it. But Billy Graham and Bret Hart, they're really great with charisma. And Greg Valentine's great, and wait till you see how funny Greg Valentine is in this movie. I never thought Greg Valentine could be that funny, and you'll see. This movie will make you laugh. This movie will make you cry, and this movie is really made for everybody, not just wrestling fans. I mean, people that aren't wrestling fans will watch this and go, I could care less about wrestling, but I love 350 Days. I think it's tremendous.
Did you actually go to Abdullah the Butcher's House of Ribs to interview him?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. That was unbelievable. He was yelling and screaming at the waitress, and it was just fun. It was hilarious. He wasn't doing a gimmick. I think he was just mad, but we were trying to film, and it was noise, and the director goes, "Don't worry about the noise. Just keep it rolling. Keep it rolling." And he was screaming in the background, and he was, oh my God, it was just, yeah, I'll never forget that. It was in Georgia, and it was unreal being there.
All right, Darren, stand by. We're going to head to a break. We'll come back and tell everybody how they can watch the movie. Back in a moment, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. Darren Antola joining us here today. One of the producers of 350 Days, the most star-studded documentary ever made on the legends of pro wrestling. Now available for pre-order. Set for release April 2nd. 350 Days, available pre-order on iTunes, as well as Blu-ray and DVD at Walmart.com, Amazon.com, and other online retail sites. And release dates for additional streaming platforms will be announced soon. And Darren, we got about 60 seconds here. Let's get some plugs in for the documentary, social media, whatever's on your mind.
Yes, please go to the website, 350daysthemovie.com. We have merchandise you could buy, 300 Days baseball caps, shirts. And also, you can like us on Facebook at 350 Days the Movie. And just looking forward to April 2nd. Like I say, it's best if you order it on iTunes because you can watch it live versus waiting for 2 days for it to get there to your house by mail. So, just people are going to be blown away by this documentary. The buzz we've been getting, it's just tremendous.
Excellent documentary. Yeah, I think you said 37 different legends showcased. Bret Hart, Billy Graham, Ted DiBiase, Greg Valentine, J.J. Dillon, Tito Santana, Jimmy Snuka, George Steele, Abdul the Butcher, the list goes on and on. Some of whom, including Jimmy Snuka, no longer with us. So this is, as Darren noted, some of the final interviews from some of these individuals. So check it out, 350 Days. Darren, I want to thank you so much for doing the show here today. Best of luck with the documentary. Hopefully we can have you on again soon. And we are out of time, everybody. Thanks, Mike, as always. Callers and listeners, everybody in the studio. We'll talk to you again next time. Wrestling Observer Live.